I'm Jessica Mitchell, 35, sitting at my parents' dining table during our annual Christmas gathering. The fine china gleams under the chandelier as my mother chuckles and says, "No wonder you're still single at 35. Her words sting as I think about Ryan, my husband of 2 years, waiting for me at home in Chicago. Nobody here knows about our marriage. The secret weighs on me, a mix of guilt and self-protection tangled together. Family is complicated, especially mine. Before I tell you how my double life started, drop a comment below telling me if you've ever kept a major secret from your family. And don't forget to subscribe if you enjoy stories about complicated family relationships. Growing up in Greenwich, Connecticut meant living in a world where appearances mattered above all else. Our Tudor-style home sat perfectly manicured on 2 acres, much like my mother kept her social calendar and her expectations for her children. Deborah Mitchell was known throughout the county for her charity work, impeccable taste, and 3 children who were meant to become shining examples of success. My mother ruled our household with a perfectly manicured iron fist. Every achievement came with a butt attached. "Great job on your SATs, Jessica," but Melanie Cooper's daughter scored higher. Every outfit, grade, and extracurricular activity was scrutinized for how it would appear to others. Praise was conditional, always just out of reach. My father, George, was physically present, but emotionally absent. He worked 60-hour weeks as a corporate attorney, providing the financial backbone for my mother's social aspirations. When home, he retreated behind his newspaper or locked himself in his study. His parenting consisted mainly of sighs and checks written for private school tuition. The rare moments of his attention felt like winning the lottery. "Jessica, a lady doesn't wear those kinds of shoes to a garden party," my mother would say, while my father would simply add, "Listen to your mother." My siblings learned the family game faster than I did. Thomas, 2 years older, checked every box my parents set out. He attended Princeton, became an investment banker, married Catherine, a woman who could have been designed in my mother's laboratory of acceptable matches, and produced 2 photogenic children who already knew which fork to use at age 5. My sister Amanda, 3 years younger, married a cardiologist, maintains a picture-perfect Instagram of their suburban Boston life, and calls my mother daily for advice. I was the disappointing middle child, the one who questioned why we needed to impress people we didn't even like, who wore black to Easter brunch at 16, who applied to art school instead of Ivy League. "Art isn't a career, Jessica. It's a hobby," my mother declared when I showed her my acceptance letter to the School of the Art Institute of Chicago. "You could have gone to Yale like your brother." I went anyway, funding my education through scholarships, student loans, and part-time jobs. Every holiday break became an exercise in endurance, sitting through passive-aggressive comments about when you get a real job and when you grow out of this phase. After graduation, I built a career as a graphic designer in Chicago, slowly climbing from junior designer to creative director at a respected advertising agency. I created award-winning campaigns and earned a salary that finally granted me true independence. But in my family's eyes, I remained the black sheep, unmarried, childless, pursuing a career they couldn't brag about at their country club. I limited my visits home to major holidays and kept phone conversations brief and surface level. My apartment in Chicago became my sanctuary, decorated with vibrant art and lacking the suffocating perfection of my childhood home. There, I could breathe. There, I was enough. Yet underneath my independence lurked a painful truth. A part of me still craved their approval. Every achievement came with the reflexive thought of, maybe now they'll be proud. Every rejection from them reopened childhood wounds. I hated that they still held this power over me, that despite the geographic distance and financial freedom, I couldn't completely break free emotionally. "When are you going to settle down, Jessica?" became my mother's favorite question during our infrequent calls. "You're not getting any younger, you know." I developed a practiced laugh and deflection techniques. "When I find someone worth settling for, Mom," I would say, or "my career keeps me too busy for dating." The truth was, I had dated plenty, But after watching several relationships crumble under the weight of my family's judgment, or my own fear of repeating my parents' emotionally distant marriage, I had nearly given up on finding someone who could handle the complex package that was Jessica Mitchell, someone who would see me, not the version of me my family demanded. Then came Ryan. My life in Chicago had fallen into a comfortable rhythm by my 32nd birthday. I had recently been promoted to creative director at Westfield and Associates, managed a team of talented designers, and had established myself as someone who could handle challenging clients with tight deadlines. My loft apartment in Wicker Park featured exposed brick walls covered with artwork collected from local artists, large windows that bathed the space in morning light, and enough distance from Connecticut to help me breathe. The first time I saw Ryan Harris was during a client meeting with Lakefront Architects. Our agency had been hired to rebrand their company, and I was presenting initial concepts to their team. Ryan sat at the conference table, arms crossed, with skepticism written across his face. He was tall with dark hair starting to silver at the temples, wearing a charcoal sweater rather than the expected suit. "I think you've missed what makes us different," he said after my presentation. "We're not just another corporate firm. We focus on sustainable urban development and community spaces. Your concepts feel generic." The room fell silent. My colleagues shifted uncomfortably, while our account executive nearly choked on his coffee. I could have been defensive, but something about his directness was refreshing after years of Connecticut passive aggression. "You're right," I said, closing my portfolio. "Let's start over. Tell me what Lakefront Architects really stands for." That meeting ran 2 hours over schedule as Ryan and I debated design philosophy, architectural integrity, and the responsibility of visual communication. By the end, we had the beginnings of a concept that excited everyone in the room. "Sorry if I was harsh earlier," Ryan said as we were packing up. "I just hate corporate BS." I laughed. "That makes two of us." Our professional relationship evolved naturally. Ryan would stop by our office to check on the rebranding progress, always bringing coffee and staying longer than necessary. I found myself looking forward to his visits, appreciating his straightforward feedback and genuine passion for his work. 3 months into the project, after a particularly late work session, Ryan suggested we grab dinner at a small Italian restaurant around the corner. "So what's your story?" he asked over pasta. "How did you end up in Chicago?" I gave him the abbreviated version: art school, career opportunities, love of the city. But something about Ryan made me feel safe enough to add, "and a healthy distance from my family in Connecticut." Ryan nodded knowingly. "I get that. Iowa feels too close sometimes, and that's a 6-hour drive." As the evening progressed, Ryan shared his own story. Divorced after a 7-year marriage that ended when his ex-wife decided she wanted a different life than they had planned. No children. Parents who still couldn't understand why he chose architecture over taking over the family farm. A sister he spoke to monthly, but who always relayed everything back to their mother. "Sometimes I think I moved to Chicago just to have conversations that wouldn't make it into the family newsletter," he admitted. I felt a connection I hadn't experienced before, someone who understood family complications without judgment. Our dinner lasted until the restaurant closed, and we continued talking on a walk along the lakefront, the city lights reflecting on the water. Ryan and I began meeting outside of work museums on weekends, trying new restaurants, sending each other articles and design ideas during the week. We were friends for months before our relationship shifted one rainy November evening. We had taken shelter from a sudden downpour in the doorway of a closed bookshop. Ryan looked at me, raindrops clinging to his hair, and said simply, "I'd really like to kiss you right now, Jessica." My answer was to close the distance between us. Dating Ryan was unlike any relationship I'd experienced. He listened, truly listened when I spoke about my work, my ideas, my dreams. He encouraged my more experimental design projects and shared his own architectural sketches for sustainable urban housing. We challenged each other creatively and supported each other emotionally. Most importantly, Ryan understood family baggage because he carried his own. When I explained why I dreaded phone calls from Connecticut, he didn't dismiss my feelings or suggest I simply cut ties. Instead, He validated my complicated emotions. "It's possible to love your family and still need boundaries," he said one evening as we cooked dinner together. "You're not wrong for protecting yourself." For the first time, I felt seen and accepted exactly as I was, not as someone's project or disappointment. 3 months into our relationship, my mother called while Ryan and I were having breakfast at my apartment. Seeing her name on my screen, I instinctively stepped onto the balcony to take the call. Our conversation followed its usual pattern: her subtle criticisms, questions about my personal life, commentary on my cousin's recent engagements. "Are you dating anyone?" she asked, as always. I looked through the glass door at Ryan, reading the Sunday paper, coffee in hand, and heard myself say, "No, not really. Work keeps me busy." After hanging up, I returned to the table feeling strangely guilty. Ryan didn't ask about the call, and I didn't volunteer information. But that moment marked my first conscious decision to keep him separate from my family. I told myself it was temporary, that I was protecting our new relationship until it was established enough to withstand the Mitchell family's scrutiny. A year later, Ryan and I moved in together. We found a spacious 2-bedroom apartment in Lincoln Park, with a small office we could both use for creative projects. Our lives merged seamlessly, his architectural books alongside my art collections, his coffee machine beside my tea kettle, his pragmatism complementing my creative impulses. Through it all, I continued my pattern of deflection with my family. Ryan became my roommate in rare mentions, then vanished from conversations entirely. It was easier that way, no explanations needed, no judgments to weather, no comparisons to my siblings' partners. What began as protection had become deception by omission, but I convinced myself it was necessary. My family had poisoned previous relationships. This one mattered too much to risk. Our second anniversary arrived on a perfect June day. Ryan had planned a weekend getaway to a small bed and breakfast on Lake Michigan. We spent the day exploring small coastal towns, sampling local wines, and walking along the shoreline. As sunset painted the sky in shades of pink and gold, Ryan suggested we take a final beach walk before dinner. The lake stretched before us, calm and vast. We walked barefoot in the sand, collecting interesting stones and talking about nothing in particular. When we reached a small, secluded cove, Ryan stopped walking. "This seems like a good spot," he said mysteriously. Before I could ask what he meant, he was reaching into his pocket and lowering himself to one knee in the sand. My heart leaped into my throat. "Jessica Mitchell," he said, opening a small velvet box to reveal a vintage emerald ring. "You're the most authentic person I've ever known. You've made me happier than I thought possible. Will you marry me?" Tears filled my eyes as I nodded, too overwhelmed to speak immediately. When I finally found my voice, I managed a joyful yes before he slipped the ring onto my finger. It fit perfectly, the emerald surrounded by tiny diamonds in a platinum setting. "It was my grandmother's," Ryan explained, as he stood and pulled me into his arms. "The only family heirloom that matters to me." We celebrated that night with champagne and plans for our future. The conversation flowed easily until Ryan asked, "When should we tell our families?" My happiness dimmed slightly. I twisted the new ring on my finger, already imagining my mother's reaction, the thin smile, the immediate questions about Ryan's family background, the subtle comparisons to my siblings' spouses. "Let's wait a little while," I suggested. "Maybe we could go to Connecticut and meet them in person?" Ryan agreed. But as the weeks passed and wedding planning began, my anxiety grew. Each call from my parents triggered a stress response. I developed excuses for why we couldn't visit Connecticut yet: work deadlines, travel plans, minor illnesses. The breaking point came during a video call with a wedding planner. She asked innocently, "And how many guests are we expecting from the bride's family?" I froze, imagining my mother critiquing every decision, my father questioning the cost, my siblings showcasing their perfect spouses. Ryan noticed my panicked expression and smoothly redirected the conversation. But later that evening, he found me crying in our bedroom. "What's really going on, Jess?" he asked, sitting beside me. "Talk to me." Everything poured out: my fear of my family ruining our wedding day, the criticism I knew would come, the ways previous relationships had crumbled under my family's judgment. Ryan listened quietly, holding my hand. "What if," he said slowly, when I finished, "we did this differently? What if our wedding was just for us?" "What do you mean?" "A private ceremony. Just you and me. Maybe a couple of close friends as witnesses. No families, no pressure, no performance. Just us making promises to each other." Relief washed over me at his suggestion. Could we really do that? "Why not? It's our wedding, Jess. Not your mother's, not my parents'. Ours." That night, our plans shifted. Instead of a traditional wedding with family obligations, we designed a day that reflected our relationship. We found a small botanical garden that allowed intimate ceremonies, hired a photographer friend, and invited only 2 people, my college roommate Mara and Ryan's best friend Daniel, as our witnesses. I chose a simple ivory dress with delicate beadwork, and Ryan selected a charcoal suit with an emerald tie that matched my engagement ring. We wrote our vows together on a rainy Sunday afternoon, promising honesty, support, and the freedom to grow both individually and together. The planning process was joyful rather than stressful. Without family expectations weighing us down, every decision felt right, chosen for us, not for anyone else's approval. Yet as our wedding day approached, guilt began to creep in. Was I making a terrible mistake? Would this secret create an irreparable rift with my family? I expressed these fears to Ryan one evening. "We can change our plans," he assured me. "We can do a traditional wedding, if that would make you happier." But the thought of returning to that pressure made my stomach clench. "No," I said firmly. "I want this just us, making this commitment our way. I'm just worried about the aftermath." "How about this?" Ryan suggested. "We have our day, just for us. Later, when we're ready, we tell our families. If they're hurt, we can offer to have a reception or celebration with them." This compromise eased my guilt enough to move forward. We developed a plan for eventually sharing our news and created a system for our married life wedding rings worn on chains when visiting family, strategic social media privacy settings, and honesty about our intentions to tell our families when the time was right. Our wedding day dawned clear and perfect in early September. The botanical garden glowed with late summer blooms, and a gentle breeze carried the scent of roses. Mara helped me with my hair, while Daniel and Ryan set up a small table with champagne. Walking toward Ryan in that quiet garden, without the weight of family expectations, I felt completely present. His face, when he saw me, a mixture of awe, love, and certainty, confirmed we were making the right choice. "I choose you," I said in my vows, "to be my partner, my support, and my home. I promise to see you for who you truly are, and to love all of you, your strengths and struggles, your dreams and fears. With you, I've found the freedom to be myself completely. I promise to give you that same gift every day of our lives together." Ryan's vows echoed similar sentiments, with an addition that brought tears to my eyes. "I promise to stand beside you as we create our own definition of family, one built on acceptance, honesty, and unconditional love." After the ceremony, the 4 of us celebrated with dinner at an intimate restaurant. There were no formal speeches, no awkward family tensions, no performance for distant relatives, just genuine celebration with people who truly knew and supported us. That night, in our hotel room, I removed the wedding ring from my finger and placed it on a chain. "For Connecticut visits?" I explained as Ryan watched me. "Just until we're ready." He nodded, though I noticed a flicker of something concerned, perhaps cross his face before he kissed me and whispered, "Mrs. Harris." Despite the secrecy surrounding it, that day remains the most authentic experience of my life. We made vows that were truly ours, uninfluenced by external pressures. We began our marriage exactly as we wanted to live it on our own terms. We just didn't anticipate how challenging those terms would become. The first test of our secret marriage came just 3 months later during Thanksgiving. Ryan's parents had planned a cruise, giving him a legitimate reason to stay in Chicago. I traveled to Connecticut alone, my wedding ring hanging on a chain beneath my sweater, hidden from view but a constant presence against my skin. The Mitchell family Thanksgiving played out like a well-rehearsed production. My mother orchestrated the meal with military precision while maintaining her perfect hostess smile. My father carved the turkey, and made the same jokes he'd been recycling for decades. Thomas and Catherine's children performed their "What I'm Thankful For" speeches with coached precision. Amanda and her husband David showed ultrasound photos of their expected second child. When attention turned to me, the questioning began. "Still working at that advertising place?" my father asked, barely looking up from his plate. "Yes, I'm now leading the creative department," I replied, hoping this might finally register as success. My mother sighed. "Creative work is fine when you're young, but have you thought about something more stable? Especially if you want to attract the right kind of man." I felt the weight of my wedding ring against my chest and forced a smile. "My work is stable, Mom, and fulfilling." "Speaking of men," Amanda chimed in, "are you seeing anyone?" "I have a colleague who's divorced but very established. No kids, clean break." The questions continued throughout the weekend. Each deflection, each small lie of omission, felt like a betrayal both to my family and to Ryan. I escaped to my childhood bedroom frequently to text or call him, speaking in hushed tones and finding comfort in his voice. "They're driving me crazy," I whispered during one call. "Mom keeps trying to set me up with random men." Ryan's laugh was strained. "Tell her you're already taken by a devilishly handsome architect." "I wish I could," I sighed, touching my hidden ring. "You can," he said softly, "whenever you're ready." But I wasn't ready. Each family interaction reinforced my fear that they would somehow taint what Ryan and I had built. I returned to Chicago, exhausted but relieved to step back into my real life, our life. Our apartment became our sanctuary. There, I could wear my wedding ring proudly. There, we were simply Jessica and Ryan Harris, a married couple building their life together. We established weekend routines: farmers market on Saturdays, coffee and newspapers on Sunday mornings, evening walks along the lakefront. We hosted dinner parties for friends who knew our truth. We created holiday traditions of our own: annual Christmas Eve viewing of Die Hard, Ryan's choice, followed by It's a Wonderful Life, my choice. For most of the year, we lived honestly and openly. Only during family visits or calls did the pretense return. We developed an elaborate system for maintaining our secret. Wedding photos stored in password, protected cloud folders, physical photos hidden during family visits, strategic social media privacy settings, and careful monitoring of mutual acquaintances who might inadvertently reveal our marriage. Ryan remained supportive but increasingly concerned. After my second Christmas visit to Connecticut as a secretly married woman, he broached the subject carefully. "How long do we keep doing this, Jess?" he asked as we lay in bed. "It's been over a year now." I traced patterns on his chest, avoiding his eyes. "I don't know. Just until it feels right." "And when will that be?" I had no answer. The truth was, I couldn't imagine a scenario where revealing our marriage to my family would end well. Every potential conversation played out disastrously in my mind, my mother's hurt turning to anger, my father's disappointment, my siblings' judgment. The thought of subjecting Ryan to their scrutiny made me physically anxious. Our secret began affecting other aspects of our life. When we discussed having children, the conversation inevitably circled back to our families. "We can't have kids while maintaining this secret, Jess," Ryan pointed out. "They would be part of both our families, whether we like it or not." He was right, of course. The timeline for our life was stalling because of my fear. Occasionally, I caught Ryan looking at me with a mixture of love and sadness that broke my heart. "Are you sorry you married me?" I asked one night after a particularly tense discussion. "Never," he said firmly, taking my face in his hands. "I would marry you again tomorrow. I just wish you didn't feel you had to hide it." The strain showed in subtle ways. Ryan became quieter when I mentioned upcoming family obligations. He stopped asking when we might tell our families. Sometimes I caught him removing his wedding ring before I left for Connecticut, staring at it with an expression I couldn't quite read before placing it in our safe. Meanwhile, my mother's comments about my single status grew more pointed with each visit. 35 is a difficult age for finding someone, Jessica," she remarked during a spring visit. "Men want younger women if they're still looking to start a family." My sister added helpfully, "David has a few friends from medical school who are still single. They're all doing very well financially. Each comment, each setup attempt, each pitying look drove me further into my deception, while simultaneously making me resent the situation I had created. I began avoiding calls from Connecticut and shortening my visits. This only led to more concerned inquiries about my isolation and suggestions that I might be depressed because I was alone. The irony was painful. I wasn't alone. I had a loving husband, a fulfilling career, and friends who knew the real me. What I lacked was the courage to claim my happiness publicly and face the consequences. The weight of living two separate lives began to take its toll. I developed insomnia before family visits, spent hours rehearsing responses to inevitable questions, and returned to Chicago emotionally drained. Ryan remained my rock through it all, but I could sense his growing frustration. Not with me, but with the situation we were trapped in, a situation of my making. "This isn't sustainable," he said gently after my return from an Easter visit, "for either of us." I knew he was right. Something would have to give. I just didn't expect it would happen so dramatically, or so soon. My mother outdid herself for this year's Christmas dinner. The dining room sparkled with silver candelabras, crystal glasses, and the good china reserved for special occasions. Holly and pine garlands wound around the chandelier, and each place setting featured hand-calligraphed name cards. The tableau resembled a magazine spread rather than a family gathering, which was exactly how my mother preferred it. I sat between Amanda and my cousin Philip, pushing glazed carrots around my plate and half listening to conversations around me. Thomas was describing his recent promotion while Catherine detailed their children's achievements at their private school. Amanda and David were debating preschools for their 4-year-old while she rested a hand on her 7 months pregnant belly. "Jessica, dear," my mother called from the head of the table, drawing everyone's attention. "I ran into Eleanor Wilson at the club yesterday. Her son Justin has moved back to Greenwich after making partner at his law firm in Boston. Divorced, no children. I thought perhaps you might like to join us for dinner next week when they come over." I set down my fork. "Mom, I'm flying back to Chicago tomorrow." "Well, next time you visit then," she continued, undeterred. "He's very accomplished, and Eleanor says he's eager to settle down again with the right person." "I'm not interested in being set up," I said, trying to keep my voice even. My mother laughed, that artificial, tinkling sound she used at social functions. "No wonder you're still single at 35, Jessica. So particular. At some point, you need to be practical." The table fell silent. The weight of my hidden wedding ring seemed to double against my chest. I took a careful sip of water, buying myself time before responding. "I'm happy with my life, Mom." "Of course you say that, dear," she replied with a dismissive wave. "No one wants to admit they're lonely. But a woman your age needs to think about the future." Thomas cleared his throat. "Jessica's career is important to her, Mother." "Yes. And that's lovely," my mother said in the same tone she used when complimenting a mediocre dish at a dinner party. "But there's more to life than work. Family is what truly matters." The irony nearly choked me. Family, the very thing I'd been protecting by keeping my marriage secret, was being used as a weapon against me. "Jessica doesn't have much time left if she wants children," Amanda added helpfully. "My doctor says fertility drops dramatically after 35. Perhaps if she spent less time on her creative pursuits and more time socializing appropriately," my mother suggested, as if I weren't sitting right there. I excused myself and retreated to my childhood bedroom, locking the door behind me. My hands shook as I called Ryan. "Hey," he answered warmly. "How's Connecticut treating you?" "Terribly," I whispered, fighting tears. The usual interrogation about my sad, single life, plus attempts to set me up with a recently divorced lawyer. Ryan was quiet for a moment. "Jess," he finally said, "I think it's time. Time? To tell them about us. This has gone on long enough. It's hurting you. It's hurting us." I sank onto the bed, anxiety coiling in my stomach. "You don't understand what they're like." "I don't," he agreed, "because you've never given me the chance to meet them. But I do understand what this secret is doing to our marriage." "Are you saying I need to choose?" "No," Ryan said firmly. "I'm saying I want to stand beside you, not remain hidden like something shameful. I want to support you when your family says hurtful things. I want to squeeze your hand under the table when your mother makes those comments. I want us to be a united front. Tears slid down my cheeks. I'm scared they'll ruin what we have. Only if we let them, he replied gently. We're stronger than that, Jess. But this double life isn't working. You come back from these visits exhausted and hurt, and honestly, I'm tired of being your secret husband. As we talked, I heard voices in the hallway outside my bedroom door. My mother and Amanda, voices lowered but still audible. I'm worried about Jessica, my mother was saying. 35, unmarried, still in that artistic job. Where did we go wrong with her? At least she's financially independent, Amanda replied. But the biological clock is real. Maybe Justin Wilson is her last chance. She's so stubborn, my mother continued. Always has been. But this refusal to settle down borders on selfishness? Does she expect us to take care of her when she's old and alone? Thomas and you have your own families to consider. I pressed the phone tighter against my ear, trying to block out their words. What's happening? Ryan asked, hearing my breathing change. They're talking about me outside my door, I whispered. Apparently, I'm selfish for not settling for some random divorced lawyer, and they're worried about who will take care of me when I'm old and alone. Ryan's curse was uncharacteristic and emphatic. That's it. This ends now. You deserve better than this, Jess. The conviction in his voice strengthened my resolve. You're right. After ending the call, I packed my suitcase quickly. When I emerged from my bedroom, my mother was arranging Christmas cookies on a platter in the kitchen. I'm leaving, I announced, suitcase in hand. She looked up, startled. Don't be ridiculous, Jessica. It's Christmas Eve. I need to get back to Chicago. My father appeared from his study, frowning. You're scheduled to fly out tomorrow afternoon. What's the rush? Something came up, I said vaguely. My mother pursed her lips. Is this about Justin Wilson? Really, Jessica, you could at least meet the man before deciding he's not good enough for you. The accumulated frustration of 2 years of secrecy, of diminishment, of judgment, bubbled over. This isn't about Justin Wilson. This is about respect. Mine for myself, and yours, or lack thereof, for me. We're only thinking of your happiness, my mother replied stiffly. No, you're thinking of your conception of what my happiness should be, I countered, surprising myself with my steadiness. I'm going home. I'll call when I land. I left amid protests and confusion, the heavy front door closing behind me with a satisfying finality. In the rental car, I removed the chain from around my neck and slid my wedding ring back onto my finger where it belonged. Enough, I said aloud to myself as I started the engine. No more hiding. The drive to the airport and the flight back to Chicago gave me time to think, to plan, to prepare. Ryan was waiting at our apartment, relief washing over his face when I walked through the door. He wrapped me in a tight embrace, and I felt the tension of the past days begin to dissipate. You're home early, he said, helping me with my coat. I couldn't do it any more, I admitted, sinking onto our couch. Every fake laugh, every deflection about my love life, every pitying look, it was suffocating me. Ryan sat beside me, taking my hands in his. So what happens now? We talked late into the night, developing a plan that both terrified and exhilarated me. We would drive to Connecticut for New Year's Eve together. We would introduce Ryan as my husband and explain our secret marriage. We would set boundaries moving forward while opening the door to a more honest relationship with my family. What if they react badly? I asked, voicing my deepest fear. Then we handle it together, Ryan replied simply. Their reaction is their responsibility, not yours. The days between Christmas and New Year's Eve passed in a blur of preparation. I rehearsed what I would say, how I would respond to likely reactions, when to stand firm and when to show compassion. Ryan listened patiently, offering suggestions but mainly providing reassurance. Just be honest, he advised. Not accusatory, not defensive, just truthful. As we packed the car for our drive east, I felt a strange calm, replacing my usual pre-Connecticut anxiety. Whatever happened, this visit would be different. No more hiding, no more pretending. No more diminishing myself or my choices. The drive took nearly 14 hours, with stops for meals and coffee. We talked about everything and nothing, reminiscing about our first date, planning a delayed honeymoon trip, discussing the book Ryan was reading. Normal married conversation that felt revolutionary, simply because we were heading toward Connecticut together. We arrived at my parents' house on New Year's Eve afternoon. The driveway was full of cars. Thomas and Catherine must have arrived with their children, and Amanda and David were likely already inside. I hadn't warned anyone we were coming, much less that I was bringing someone with me. Ryan squeezed my hand as we approached the front door. "Ready?" I nodded, ring prominently displayed on my left hand, and rang the doorbell. My father opened the door, surprise registering on his face. "Jessica? We weren't expecting you until tomorrow." "I decided to come early," I said, my heart pounding. "And I brought someone with me. Dad, this is Ryan Harris, my husband." The word hung in the air between us. My father's eyes widened as he processed what I'd said, his gaze moving to our intertwined hands, to our matching wedding rings, and back to my face. "Your husband?" he repeated. "Yes," I confirmed. "We've been married for 2 years." "George, who is it?" My mother's voice called from inside before she appeared behind my father. She froze when she saw us, her perfect hostess smile faltering. "Jessica, who is this?" "This is Ryan Harris," I repeated. "My husband." My mother's face went through a remarkable series of expressions: surprise, confusion, hurt, and finally, a careful blankness. "I see. Perhaps you should both come inside." The living room fell silent as we entered. Thomas and Catherine sat with their children on the sofa, while Amanda and David occupied the love seat. All conversation stopped as my mother let us in. "Jessica has brought a guest," she announced, with forced lightness. "Apparently, her husband." The room erupted in exclamations and questions. I raised my hand, silencing them. "I know you all have questions, and I'll answer them. But first, let me properly introduce Ryan Harris. We met through work 3 years ago, dated for a year, and have been married for 2 years. 2 years? Amanda echoed incredulously. How is that possible? I took a deep breath. We had a private ceremony at the Garfield Park Conservatory in Chicago. Just us and 2 friends as witnesses. And you didn't tell us? My mother's voice was tight with controlled emotion. Your own family? This was the moment I had rehearsed most carefully. I looked directly at my mother, keeping my voice calm and even. No, we didn't. That was my decision, not Ryan's. And I'd like to explain why, if you're willing to listen. My father gestured to the remaining armchair. Ryan and I sat together, his arms supportive around my waist. I pulled out my phone and opened a photo album. This was our wedding day, I said, passing the phone to my mother. She looked down at the screen, her lips pressed into a thin line. The photo showed Ryan and me in the conservatory, surrounded by flowers, looking radiantly happy. "You look beautiful," she admitted reluctantly, passing the phone to my father. As the photos circulated, I began my explanation. I kept our relationship and marriage private because I was afraid. Afraid of judgment, criticism, and having something precious to me picked apart or diminished. Every relationship I've brought home has been subjected to intense scrutiny. Every choice I've made has been questioned. I needed something that was just mine, untouched by family expectations. My mother's posture stiffened. "So you're saying we're too critical to be included in your life's most important moment? That's incredibly selfish, Jessica." Ryan's hand tightened around mine, but I squeezed back, signaling I was okay. "It wasn't about selfishness, Mom. It was about self-protection. For years, I've heard that my career isn't serious enough, that I'm running out of time to find someone, that I'm not living up to family expectations. Just this Christmas, you laughed about me being single at 35 while trying to set me up with a stranger, all while I was wearing my wedding ring on a chain under my sweater, hiding the most important relationship in my life." My father leaned forward. "But why keep it secret for 2 years? Why not tell us after the fact?" "Because I was afraid of exactly this reaction," I admitted. "The hurt, the accusations of selfishness, and honestly, I didn't know how to bridge the gap between the life I've built and the life you've always wanted for me. You've made us sound like monsters, my mother said, tears forming. Have we really been so terrible that you couldn't share your happiness with us? Ryan spoke for the first time since our introduction. If I may, he said respectfully, Jessica loves you all very much. She talks about you often. But sometimes the people we love can hurt us without realizing it. Jessica wasn't trying to punish you by keeping our marriage private. She was trying to protect something precious to both of us. My mother turned her attention to Ryan, seemingly ready to unleash her hurt feelings on him, but something in his calm, direct manner gave her pause. And you were comfortable with this deception? She asked instead. No, Ryan answered honestly. I respected Jessica's decision, but I've been encouraging her to tell you for some time. Family is important to me too. My parents don't know either, though for different reasons. We both want to move forward more honestly now. A heavy silence fell over the room. Thomas cleared his throat. Congratulations, I guess, he offered awkwardly. A bit late, but still. Catherine, always the peacemaker, added, we should open some champagne, celebrate properly. But my mother wasn't ready to move on so quickly. I don't understand how you could exclude us from your wedding day, Jessica. After everything we've done for you, the old guilt tried to surface, but I pushed it back. This wasn't about you, Mom. It was about what Ryan and I needed. Our wedding day was perfect for us, intimate, meaningful, and true to who we are. I'm not asking you to understand or approve of how we did it. I'm asking you to respect that it was our choice to make. And now? My father asked. What do you want from us now? A fresh start, I said simply. A chance to introduce you to my husband properly. An opportunity to build a relationship based on who we actually are, not who anyone thinks we should be, Ryan added. We'd be happy to have a family celebration or reception if that would be meaningful to everyone. But going forward, we need honesty and respect on all sides. The conversation continued late into the evening, sometimes tense, occasionally tearful, but progressively more honest than any discussion I'd ever had with my family. Not everyone was immediately accepting. My mother vacillated between hurt indignation and attempts to reframe the situation as something she could control. My father asked practical questions about Ryan's career and our finances. My siblings expressed varying degrees of confusion and support. We didn't resolve everything that night. Some wounds were too fresh, some patterns too established to break in a single conversation. But as midnight approached and the traditional champagne was poured, Ryan and I stood together, rings visible, identities clear. As the new year arrived, my mother approached us somewhat stiffly. I can't say I approve of how you handled this, she said quietly. But he seems like a good man, Jessica. I hope you'll give us the chance to know him. It wasn't wholehearted acceptance, but it was a beginning. Ryan and I didn't stay at my parents' house that night. The emotional weight of the revelation had exhausted everyone, and we agreed that some space might help. We checked into a hotel nearby, collapsing onto the bed in a mixture of relief and lingering tension. That went. Not terribly, Ryan ventured, loosening his tie. I laughed weakly. Not terribly is probably the best we could have hoped for. We analyzed the evening, noting the surprising allies, Catherine's immediate warmth toward Ryan, Thomas's eventual support, and expected challenges, my mother's hurt pride, Amanda's confusion about why I hadn't confided in her. Despite the difficult moments, I felt lighter than I had in years. The weight of secrecy finally lifted. The next morning, my mother texted inviting us to lunch, just the four of us. Her phrasing suggested, the two couples. Ryan and I agreed, curious about this more intimate setting. We met at an upscale restaurant in town. My parents already seated when we arrived. My mother had clearly taken extra care with her appearance, wearing a designer dress and fresh pearl earrings, her armor for difficult situations. After awkward greetings and ordering, my mother surprised me by addressing Ryan directly. So, Ryan, Jessica tells me you're an architect. What kind of projects do you work on? The question was so normal, so mother of the son-in-law appropriate, that I nearly dropped my water glass. Ryan seamlessly described his work with sustainable urban housing developments. his passion evident in his detailed explanations of community-centered design. My mother nodded along, asking follow-up questions that suggested she was genuinely listening. My father contributed occasionally with questions about building materials and energy efficiency. It was surreal watching my husband interact with my parents like any normal family. As dessert arrived, my mother set down her fork and looked at me directly. "I want you to know that I've been thinking about what you said last night." I braced myself, but her next words surprised me. "While I still believe families should share important life events, I recognize that perhaps I haven't always created an environment where you felt safe doing so." It wasn't exactly an apology, but from my mother, it was revolutionary. I nodded, accepting the olive branch for what it was. "I hope you'll understand," she continued, "that it will take some time to adjust. But Ryan is welcome in our home, and I would appreciate it if you wouldn't keep any more major life events from us." My father cleared his throat. "Your mother and I have been talking. Perhaps we haven't always given you the space to be yourself. We had certain expectations, and when you chose a different path, we may have been too rigid." I blinked back unexpected tears. In my 35 years, I had never heard my father acknowledge that his expectations might have been part of the problem. "Thank you," I managed. "That means a lot." Ryan reached for my hand under the table, squeezing it supportively. "We both want to move forward more openly," he added. "The secrecy wasn't good for anyone, especially Jessica." The conversation shifted to more neutral territory, potential visits, holidays, eventually sharing the news with extended family. By the time we said goodbye, tentative plans had been made for my parents to visit Chicago in the spring to see our home and life there. "That was unexpected," I said to Ryan as we drove back to the hotel. "Good unexpected?" "I think so," I replied cautiously. "They're trying. It's more than I expected." The drive back to Chicago the next day felt different from all my previous journeys between Connecticut and Illinois. For the first time, I wasn't leaving one life behind to return to another. The compartments I had so carefully maintained were dissolving, creating space for something more integrated, if still imperfect. Over the following months, small but significant changes emerged in my family dynamics. My mother began calling weekly instead of monthly, asking about both my work and Ryan rather than focusing exclusively on when I might have children. My father sent articles about architecture that made him think of Ryan's projects. Even my siblings adjusted, Thomas inviting us both for a weekend at their lake house, Amanda sending birthday gifts addressed to both of us. The changes weren't without challenges. My mother occasionally slipped into her old patterns, making subtle comparisons between my life choices and my siblings. My father still struggled to show interest in my creative work. Family gatherings retained some of their performative quality, but the foundation had shifted towards something more authentic. Ryan and I also worked to extend our newfound openness to his family. We drove to Iowa in February, explaining our secret marriage to his parents on their farm. Their reaction differed from my family's less hurt pride, more confusion about why we'd felt the need for secrecy, but the reconciliation followed a similar pattern of tentative steps toward understanding. By summer, 6 months after our revelation, we had established new patterns of communication with both families. When my parents visited Chicago in May, they saw our apartment for the first time, the art on our walls, the office we shared, the life we'd built together. My mother managed to limit her redecorating suggestions to just 2 rooms, which felt like progress. "I can see why you love it here," she admitted as we walked along the lakefront. "It suits you both." In July, Ryan and I hosted a small gathering in our apartment, a belated wedding reception of sorts. Both sets of parents attended, along with siblings and close friends. It wasn't the elaborate affair my mother might have planned, but it was genuine. Watching our families interact, awkwardly at first, but with increasing warmth, I felt a sense of completion I hadn't realized I was missing. That night, after everyone had gone and we were cleaning up, Ryan brought up a subject we'd been discussing tentatively for months. "So," he said casually, "now that the families are all integrated, what do you think about starting one of our own?" I smiled, setting down the wine glass I was washing. "I think I'd like that. No more secrets, no more separate lives, no more hiding, he agreed, pulling me close. The journey from secret wife to openly acknowledged spouse had been more challenging and rewarding than I could have anticipated. I had feared that bringing my family into our relationship would diminish it somehow, that their judgment would poison what Ryan and I had built. Instead, I discovered that honesty, even when difficult, created the space for authentic connection. My relationship with my family remains imperfect. We still navigate differences in values, expectations, and communication styles. But the pretense has fallen away, allowing for relationships based on who we actually are rather than who we pretend to be. The most profound lesson from my double life wasn't about my family at all. It was about the walls I had built to protect myself. By compartmentalizing my life, I had limited my own freedom and authenticity. The secrecy that felt protective had actually become a prison of its own. True intimacy with a partner, with family, with oneself requires vulnerability. It means being seen fully, flaws and all, and standing firm in your truth, even when others may not understand or approve. It means setting boundaries while keeping your heart open. Ryan and I now host holidays in our Chicago home as often as we travel to Connecticut or Iowa. We've created our own traditions that blend elements from both our families with unique touches that are distinctively ours. Last Christmas, watching my mother help Ryan hang ornaments while my father discussed architecture with Ryan's dad, I felt a profound gratitude for the messy, imperfect, authentic family we were becoming. The secret marriage that began as an act of self-protection evolved into a catalyst for growth and honesty across generations. By choosing authenticity, even when it was terrifying, we created space for genuine connection, not just with each other, but with the families who helped shape us. If you're carrying your own secrets, weighing the safety of hiding against the freedom of truth, I won't tell you there's a single right answer. Some boundaries are necessary, some truths need careful timing, but I can tell you that living divided is eventually more painful than facing difficult conversations. Build your life on your terms. Love openly. Set boundaries when needed. And remember that authenticity, while sometimes frightening, is the foundation of true connection. Have you ever kept a significant secret from your family to protect your happiness? How did you handle it? Share your experience in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe if you found value in my story. Thank you for being part of this journey with me, and I hope my experience helps you navigate your own complicated family dynamics with grace and authenticity.